For I'm to Springer. Take this one, my sister. For all your years of hard work in the black community. I'm glad that Carrie come. They're beating an African drum, demanding reparation for enslavement in the Caribbean. But for what them whites did to we, calls for more than an apology. CARICOM must make new demands and tell Holland, France, Spain, and Britain. Tell them, Jews and Amerindians, all of them get land, all the old sugar plantations. You give the Indian man all the hills and forest land, all the oil and gas on the hand. You take all this rich resource and hand to the white man. So Britain, if you are serious about reparation, hand over Sheffield and Nottingham to the African man. It's my ancestors create them. This you must understand. So hand over Birmingham to the African man. Hand them over. I'm glad from some St. Vincent. Let CARICOM leaders listen and come to the conclusion. Reparation. Cause the enslaved were for nothing except the whip upon their skin, leaving them with tears in their eyes, while Europeans suck the orange dry. Tell them, Jews in Israel and Poland, all of them get land, all we sugar and we rice land. You give the Indian man all the beaches with white sand, and we minerals to pan. You handed all this wealth over to the white man. So Frenchmen, if you are serious about reparation, hand over La Rochelle and Nantes to the African man. If you understand how black slaves and how the whites behave, you'll hand over Westmoreland and St. Anne's to the African man. Hand them over. Hand them over. Hand them over. Come back. I'm glad leaders in CARICOM opening up their eardrum. I now get to realize the white man's deception and his lies. So when to the black slave police while the whites live in luxury. Though my ancestors shed every drop of blood to build the wealth of Europe. Tell them, all them native Australians, all of them get land. Castro restored landless Cubans after their revolution. Yankees paid back Japan, France fixed up Vietnam, but she leave all of the Haitians in destitution. So Holland, if you are serious about reparation, you'll hand over Amsterdam to the African man. It's my ancestors what built their dam. This you must understand. So Holland, hand over Rotterdam to the African man. Hand them over. I'm glad that Professor Beckles fighting for our peoples and brought to the House of Commons. But though he raised that 10-point plan, the salient point he missed as man. Beckles must now say to Britain, every black man needs a piece of land. Tell them, them Native Americans, Yankees gave them land. Comanche and Apache Redman get their own reservations. Katanga and Maori tribesmen now occupy New Zealand, and Britain gave the poor white man nearly all of Zululand. So if Britain, you are serious about reparation, hand over Manchester and Lisbon to the African man. The first thing Britain must sanction to all Barbadians, hand over Gabby's Emerton to the African man. Tell them Dr. Beckles, as a historian, Port of Spain and over with demand for the African man. If we truly understand the meaning of reparation, hand over Sheffield and Nottingham to the African man. This my ancestors what create them. This you must understand. So hand over London and Birmingham to the African man. Hand them over. I glad comes out some sentence. Let carry come leaders listen and come to the conclusion. Europe must pay reparation, cause the enslaved were for nothing except the whip upon their skin, leaving them with tears in their eyes, while Europeans suck the orange dry. Tell them, Jews in Israel and Poland, all of them get land. All we sugar and we rice lands, you give the Indian man. All the beaches with white sand, and we minerals to pan. You handed all this wealth over to the white man. So Frenchmen, if you are serious about reparation, hand over La Rochelle and Nantes to the African man. If you understand how black slaves and how the whites behave, you'll hand over Westmoreland and St. Anne's to the African man. Hand them over, hand them over, hand them over. Our glad leaders in CARICOM opening up their eardrum, I now get to realize the white man's deception and his lies. So when today blacks sleep poorly, while the whites live in luxury, though my ancestors shed every drop of blood to build the wealth of Europe. Tell them, all them native Australians, all of them get land. Castro restored landless Cubans after their revolution. Yankees paid back Japan, France fixed up Vietnam, but she leave all of them Haitians in destitution. So Holland, if you are serious about reparation, you'll hand over Amsterdam to the African man. Is my ancestors but built their dam? This you must understand. So Holland hand over Rotterdam to the African man. Hand them over. Fighting for our peoples and brought to the House of Commons the need for African reparation. But though he raised a 10-point plan, the salient point he missed as man. Beckles must now say to Britain, every black man needs a piece of land. Tell them, them Native Americans, Yankees gave them land. Comanche and Apache Redman get their own reservations. Katanga and Maori tribesmen now occupy New Zealand. And Britain gave the poor white man nearly all of Zululand. So if Britain, you are serious about reparation, hand over Manchester and Lisbon to the African man.
Hand them over. Every African must get a piece of land. African man. Tell them. Hand them over. Hand them over.
The first thing about reparation, Europe must sanction, hand over Rotan and Savannah to the African man. Hand them over. For enslavement in the Caribbean, but for what them whites did to we, calls for more than an apology. CARICOM must make new demands and tell Holland, France, Spain and Britain, tell them, Jews and Amerindians, all of them get land, all the old sugar plantations, you give the Indian man, all the hills and forest lands, all the oil and gas on the hand, you take all this rich resource and hand to the white man. So Britain, if you are serious about reparation, hand over Sheffield and Nottingham to the African man. It's my ancestors that create them. This you must understand. So hand over London and Birmingham.
Hand them over. Hand them over. Oh, yes. Dr. Hollis, Liverpool, the mighty chalk dust, reparations, the burden of leadership in the arena of knowledge and consciousness is left to those of us like chalk dust and the rest of us who you all have invested in to speak up for you. Hand over reparations to the African man and woman. We want land. We want land. Look, land, a God country. And we want land. The burden of raising that clarion call is left. Dr. Hines, you're now going to Parliament. You have to behave yourself. What you mean? Well, you can't talk about reparations. You can't talk about African liberation. The Guyana that we live in, the elites. In order to be nice and proper, you must not talk about African history and African culture. Dr. Hines, you're going to Parliament. You can't talk about blackness. You can't teach the children the truth. Our Guyana, our elite political culture. Behave yourself, Dr. Hines. Dr. Hines, you go into Parliament. You can't wear dashiki. You got to get some jacket and tie. Oh, our elite culture in Guyana. No surrender. No surrender. The dashiki shall go into the House of Assembly. No surrender. I shall continue to teach the children. Teach the children. Chalk dust. Chalk dust. Chalk dust, my brother. Land for the African. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking. No surrender. No surrender.
A glad consult some Saint Vincent. Make CARICOM leaders listen and come to the conclusion. Europe must pay reparation, cause the enslaved work for nothing except the whip up on their skin. leaving them with tears in their eyes. While Europeans suck the orange dry. Tell them, Jews in Israel and Poland, all of them get land. All we sugar and we rice land, you give the Indian man. All the beaches with white sand, hungry minerals to pan. You handed all this wealth over to the white man. So Frenchmen, if you are serious about reparation, hand over La Rochelle and Nantes to the African man. If you understand how black slaves and how the whites behave, you'll hand over Westmoreland and St. Anne's to the African man. Hand them over.
Hand them over. Hand them over. Hand them over. Oh, Dr. Hines, when you go into Parliament, we want you to go in there and give it to them good. That is the message. That is the working class culture. Dr. Hines going to Parliament and war for us, poor people. War for us, black people. That's the message we're talking about, not the elite message. Dr. Hines, when you go into Parliament, you have to tone down the rhetoric. What rhetoric? You cannot go in there and talk about reparations. You cannot go in there and talk about black liberation. You cannot go in there and talk about people's power. The elite culture stinks. Stinks. Dr. Hines, when you go in there, you got to put on suit and tie. The elite culture, so pretentious. But Dr. Hines, when you go in there, we want you put it on upon them. Turn in there into an arena of contestation, of good over evil. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Tonight, reparations. Reparations, and we're talking truth. Always talking truth to power and truth to the powerless so that the powerless can become empowered. What a Guyana we live in. What a Guyana we live in. Sometimes you try to make sense. Sometimes you try to make sense of our country. And you know, as I've been saying, there are two cultures. The elite culture, and the culture of the working class. What we call popular culture. Pop culture, like pop music. It is the music that comes from the popular masses. The kaiso, the reggae, the jazz, the blues, the bongo, the high life from West Africa. The music of the masses, the popular culture, the elite culture, and the popular culture. They're all bombarding left, right, and center. This is what you have to do. I will not still my voice. I will not still my voice. It's just another dimension of the struggle of the oppressed to overcome oppression. Dr. Walter Rodney said, if one uses your race to dehumanize you, you use your race to what? Humanize yourself. Humanize yourself. Dr. Walter Rodney, son of Guyana. We are what we are, and that's the way it's going to be. Bob Marley called them stiff-necked fools, crazy ballheads, vampires who suck the blood of the children. Good evening to all of you. I love you all, wherever you're joining us from, whether it's in Guyana or out of Guyana. We're all in this thing together. We're all in this thing together. We are making sense, still trying to make sense of the September elections, the 2025 elections. Let not your hearts be troubled. Let not your hearts be troubled. We are products of a complex history. These post-plantation outposts called Guyana and Trinidad and St. Vincent and Barbados, small in terms of landmass, small in terms of population, but complex. And when our people act, simplistic explanations of their actions will never suffice. We are a complex people. The people who were enslaved, and as soon as they walk out of the slave plantation, they are lifting up humanity, creating civilizations, buying lands, turning them into habitats of humanity. Complex. The slave today and the hero tomorrow, the genius tomorrow. Which means that yesterday you were never slaves. But out of the domination of slavery comes the domination of the intellect, the creative intellect of the African masses. We are a complex people. The Indians who came here after emancipation, coming into a strange land, not coming against their will, but coming to this strange land. And also having to make sense of this place, which was once a plantation. Coming here and meeting the Amerindians and the Africans, joined by the Chinese and the Portuguese, with the Europeans, mostly absent, but very present in terms of the whip. Rubbing up together the complex little islands and mainland countries we call our Caribbean. September 1st, ask questions. Many people are rushing to answers, simplistic answers. Dr. Hines, where is the evidence of rigging? Does the WPA have any evidence of rigging? It's a legitimate question, but it's not a contextual question. Not me, and Nami says so. It's the observer team, I think it was the Commonwealth observers, who said the state media, NCN, 92% of its electoral and political coverage went to the PPP. 92%. Not me says so, it's the white boy says so. And yet I am asked for the evidence. The evidence is there. 92% of the coverage of election in NCN, the National Communications Network, went to the PPP, one contestant. It means 8% had to be shared up between APNU, WIN, Forward Guyana, Assembly for the People, and the AFC. 8 had to share up among 5. 92. And yet you're asking the WPA to give you the evidence of rigging. That is evidence of rigging. When you monopolize the public airwave, which is a public good. When you monopolize it, it means your voice every day, hammering, 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 hammering in people's ears. The communications experts will tell you, you hammer something over and over and over again. And that's what people hear. And it didn't stop there with the state media. It didn't stop there with DPI, the public information outfit, state media, carrying PPP press releases. It didn't stop there. Guyana Times, friendly PPP media, or you may call it owned by the PPP. iNews, P News, Q News. 99.99% PPP coverage. And you ask if the elections were free and fair? Information, information, information. When you monopolize the public space, the question I should be asked, the WPA should be asked, is, Dr. Hinds, 92% of the coverage in the state media was given to the PPP. Don't you agree that that is a big part of a rigged election? That is the question I should be asked. But no, that fact is ignored. That is why Guyana partly continues in the mess. Because the gatekeepers of information and knowledge are too timid to really confront the truth. The truth. If I, David Hinds, were to say tonight, the PNC is a black man party, oh, tomorrow the headlines would be blazing. If I were to say, if I, David Hinds, were to say tonight that when Irfan Ali and Jack Dio and them come into your community, spell them and chase them out, oh my God, the headlines would be blazing tomorrow. If I were to say tonight, Nagamutu and Ramjatan were proud Nimakarans, oh my goodness, the headlines will be blazing tomorrow and forevermore. Hey. If I, David Hinds, were to say tonight that all them Guyanese who didn't vote for the APNU, they're stupid and ignorant, oh, the headlines would be blazing tomorrow. You all get the drift. All those words have been uttered by PPP leaders. If I, David Hinds, were to go to Parliament and tell an African woman or an Indian woman or an Amerindian woman on the other side of the aisle that she need a dildo, oh my God, the headlines will be blazing tomorrow and forevermore. Oh, what a dirty chap David Hinds is. Listen to his rhetoric. It's nasty. And they would call Aubrey Norton. And they would say, recall David Hinds from Parliament. Disassociate yourself from him. condemn him. But the man who tell them lady in parliament, but dildo, nobody called on Jack Dio and them to condemn him, not to this day. Dr. Eddie Glaude wrote a book, Democracy in Black. And he made the point in that book about different value system. What is the value of the Black life and what is the value of other lives? And if Black life is not valued as the same way as other lives, then what comes from the mouth of Blacks, the actions of Blacks, are deemed different. That is, Blacks will do one thing, others will do the same thing, but Blacks will be condemned for it. If I were to say, as that Indian supremacist Ravi Dev said, that Black people must accept their second-class citizenship, take the little drippings that you're getting from the PPP and accept it. That what is important is not their intention, it's that they give you a little chupity. But because you chupity, take the chupity, and never mind they want to make you chupity. We played it here. Ravi Dev, the Indian supremacists. Number one, they got a few of them. But he is the guru. Meaning he believes in Indian supremacy. He said Indians came here to make money. They come out of a superior culture of money making. And he said to Indians, come to Guyana and make money. Because the Africans here, he infers, don't know how to make money. Indian supremacists in our midst. And nobody goes to him and says, Mr. Ravi Dev, are you a racist? These are the people who said that Black people stupid. When they come out of slavery, they plant cassava and heather and planting for feed themselves rather than plant rice to export. They made terrible choices because they're stupid. And that's why they are where they are today. They carry that to the United Nations. The supremacists give them that, led by Ravi Dev. And nobody goes to Ravi Dev, are you a racist? But when we say we love being African and that Black people deserve to be treated equally, our own Black media people are coming to us. Dr. David, are you a racist? Oh, what a country. What a country. But we ain't giving up. We ain't giving up. 92%, I am telling you, in any other country, every opposition political party would be every day repeating that number. The media, the independent media, would be blaring that left, right, and center. The PPP, 92% coverage in the state media, 100% coverage in friendly media, and then about 60% coverage in the so-called independent media. What is left for the other political parties? Making sense of September 1st. if you approach September 1st with a complex lens, your conclusions are going to be much more nuanced than what passes today for analysis. I was looking at an interview, well, not an interview, it was a talk show between two young people from Guyana Standard. And one of the journalists, they're two young journalists, one of them said something profound. She said, well, if we accept that the mostly African young people who voted for Win didn't vote race, then it must logically mean that they vote policies. But when you take into consideration that Win did not advance any rail policy, then obviously they couldn't have voted for Win based on policy. So they didn't vote race, they didn't vote policy. Then what did they vote? As a professor, someone who was taught at university, I would say, excellent. You have a research question there. People normally vote race or they vote policy in a country like Guyana. And if those mostly young people, you're saying vote neither race, and there was no policy for them to vote on, then what motivated their vote for Win? That was, for me, profound. And I don't mean to be condescending. It's just the teacher in me. When I hear something like that, my eye lights up, because you're hearing someone who's thinking. But when you hear somebody say, well, these young people, they're not saying these African young people voted for Win. And so it means racial voting patterns are ending. And some of them now have altered that, and they're saying African young people are no longer voting race. So if they're not voting race, according to this young journalist, then they must be voting policy. And if there's no policy for them to vote on, then what did they vote on? Excellent. Excellent reasoning. That's where we have to proceed. And we have to accept the fact Win got about 20,000 votes from the interior. If we accept Region 1, Region 7, Region 8, Region 9, they got about 20,000 votes. And if we accept that most of the hinterland votes are Amerindians, then we can conclude that they got about 20,000 votes from among Amerindians. Then they got a few. I think in Region 6, they got a few from the Indian community. So let's say they get about 7,000 or 8,000. That's another 28. That goes now to 28, 29,000 out of 109,000. So they got about 80,000 African votes. APNU got 77, 78,000 African votes. So one can say that Win and the APNU shared the African vote. When you consider that the three smaller parties together got about 9,000 votes, give and take here and there, about 8,000 of those 9,000 only are mainly African votes. When you add APNU 77 with that 8, that's 85. Win got 80,000 or thereabout. Well, don't worry, the PPP, they got a few. when you look at those numbers, it's hardly the wipeout that people are talking about. Because APNU got about 220,000 votes, 219,000, they got about 78,000. So they got about 140,000 less. If WIN took about 80,000, the PPP took about 3,000-4,000. Then you are talking about 50,000 who stayed away. You're talking about those who voted the last time and didn't vote this time. So if you look at the three-way, WIN got about 80,000 Africans. APNU and the smaller parties got about 88,000. And you have about 60,000 that stayed away. That is where you have to start before you come to this conclusion that APNU was wiped out. The vast majority of Africans, 2/3 of them or thereabout, either voted for the APNU or stayed away. Yet if you came from Mars, you would believe the coverage that the vast majority of Africans rejected the APNU and voted for WIN. I am urging my fellow commentators, I am urging my fellow analysts, look at the data before you start. Then when you finish looking at the data, ask yourself intelligent questions like the young journalist asked. If these 80,000 Africans, it might be a little less than that, but let me say about 80,000 Africans voted for WIN. If you're saying they didn't vote race, then you are logically saying that they vote policy. If there was no policy from WIN for them to vote on, then what drove them there? That's where you begin your analysis. That's where you begin your analysis, and we are hardly seeing that from our analysts, either because they're lazy or because they're dishonest. You hear how the PPP did so well. The PPP got, I think, an extra 10 to 15,000 votes, which gave them 2 extra seats. And yet people are talking about them doing well. When you consider they had 92% coverage in the state media, 100% coverage in friendly media, over 50% coverage in independent media, and yet they got just about 10 to 15,000 votes. Yet people are saying, oh, they did so well. If they spent $30 billion and they got an extra 15,000 votes, oh, they did so well. But the evidence doesn't suggest that. $50 billion, $30 billion, wherever they spend, 98%, close to 100% coverage, they should have gotten. If their message sunk in, as people are saying, that they did well, they talk about the roads, and they talk about this, and they talk about that. Well, with all the money, all the state coverage, they should have gotten 60 out of 65 seats. We're either ashamed or we don't want to talk the truth. the PPP maintained their votes from the last election with a marginal 10,000, 12,000 more, 15,000 more. They did that because their traditional base voted for them. That's it. That's the simple answer. It's not because they build roads and build this and build that, as people are saying, they did well in the last time. No, they maintained their base. That's why they won. And it doesn't mean that their base liked what they did, but their base in an environment of ethnic voting decide we are going to vote for the party that looks like us. You cannot tell me that those 240-something thousand people who voted for PPP voted for 40-something% poverty. They voted for the PPP because the PPP has imposed on Guyana 40-something% poverty. You can't tell me that those people voted for the PPP because of the high cost of living. They know that under the PPP, the cost of living is high. They know that under the PPP, poverty is 40-something% because most of them are in poverty. They know of the dropout rate in high school. They know of the poverty in the corruption in the PPP. Nami says, so the PPP itself says corruption is rife in Guyana and we're going to set up an anti-corruption unit or anti-corruption. They admit. So Indian people know there is corruption. They know there is poverty. They know of high cost of living. So they couldn't vote for the PPP because of those things. The question the analyst must ask, if they didn't vote for the PPP because of its economic record, then what did they vote for? Why did they vote PPP? Just as we said, let me go back. If young Africans didn't vote race, didn't vote policy, then what they vote for? If Indians didn't vote for PPP's record of corruption, they didn't vote for PPP's stewardship of the economy, then what did they vote for? Comrades, brothers and sisters, our country is an educated country. It used to be the level of education and literacy used to be much higher when I was a boy. But I think our society, despite the fact that we are not putting out the same kind of excellence that we did yesterday and the day before, we are still an intelligent country. And we have to put before our people intelligence, not ignorance. Don't come and tell the PPP did well and we must congratulate them. Their own supporters are not congratulating them. The very week after the election, rice farmers are out there saying, we want better prices for our paddy. They could not have voted for the PPP because the PPP gave them better rice, better money for their paddy. They didn't vote for the PPP because of that. The analyst must ask, why did they vote for the PPP? If the PPP wasn't paying them the money for their paddy. The simplistic answers that the intelligent gatekeepers give, that simplicity drills down into our society. The simplistic conclusions you're hearing about this election, you wonder whether people are thinking. It is not that these people are not thoughtful. They are thoughtful, but they send their thoughts on holiday. And they give us this simplistic nonsense. No searching analysis. No searching analysis. We can't even figure out what is the real turnout of the election because we have a bloated list. 757,000 out of, we don't know what the population size is. Don't be surprised if the voters list is higher than the population. Don't be surprised. Do not be surprised that if the real census figures come out, they may show a population that is lower than the voters list. What on earth? And then you come and ask me for evidence of rigging? We cannot tell the voters turnout. Because if we are saying 430,000 people voted, it's 430 out of 757, but that 757 is bloated. So you cannot even say what the turnout it was. All you can say, you can measure, is those who voted this time against those who voted the last time. We don't know how many Africans stayed away from the poll the last time. We don't know how many Indians, how many Amerindians stayed away from the polls the last time. Because of the bloated list. So something as basic as what was the voter turnout, we cannot answer. And yet people are surprised when we say that the elections do not meet the test of free and fair. I hate the fact that those who know better are not saying better and are not doing better. How can you look at a society in which there are three major ethnic groups and one ethnic group vote clearly along racial lines, clearly, and look at the other groups, the other major group, splitting its votes along and say what a good thing it is, knowing fully well that in a winner-take-all system, when you split your vote around, you are weakening your electoral position, knowing fully well, yet people are congratulating that. And not measuring that against the other side, which votes solidly for its party. You're applauding the electoral weakening of one group and the electoral strengthening of the other group, and saying, oh, what a wonderful thing that is. It's a good thing for Guyana. How can it be a good thing for Guyana in an environment of ethnic and racial competition when one side weakens itself? The opposition got 2 seats less than the last time. It had 31 seats. This time together, it got 29. For all this weakening of ethnic voting patterns and what I want, they get less votes altogether than the last time. 109 for win, 77 for APNU, there's 186. Another 9,000 for the smaller parties, there's 195. The last time they got 219,000. 24,000 less. For all this positiveness that you're talking about. Oh, young Africans are not voting race. And yeah. But we get less than the last time. How can something good lead to a bad outcome? That's what you all are telling us. All these wonderful things African did. They still didn't win. They got less than they get the last time, and we are celebrating that as a positive thing for Guyana, where one group is diluting its assets, and the other group is consolidating its assets in an environment of competition. That's what our analysts are telling us. Oh, Guyana would become the optimum ethnic society if we saw 50,000 Africans go and vote for the PPP and 50,000 Indians vote for APNU. Then we are on our way to say, oh Lord, ethnic voting patterns here are over. Those Indians who vote for APNU, we can say they're not voting race, then they're voting something else, maybe policy, and vice versa. But that is not what happened. And in my study of ethnic societies around the world, it has never happened. I can't say that it will never happen. I'm not a seafar man. But it has never happened where in ethnically divided societies like ours, the two ethnic groups at the same time cross over. The Indian supremacist, Ravidev, crossover man. That's why you must call it crossover man. The crossover is more a cross. They give African people to fetch. But African people didn't fetch it because they didn't cross over. Indian people didn't cross over and African didn't cross over. All that Africans did is shift around their votes within the community. The test of the end of ethnic voting patterns is when the two groups simultaneously move over. The closest we came to that, the closest was in an non-electoral environment. And that was in the 1970s and early 1980s of the WPA, when Indians moved from the PPP because they felt that the PPP was too soft and wasn't fighting Burnham. And they saw in the WPA fighters. So they came over to us to help them to remove Burnham. Africans saw in the WPA an alternative. They saw in the WPA fighters. And so the two groups came over to the WPA at the same time. But it wasn't in an electoral environment. It was in an environment of resistance. Africans felt that their own party was overreaching, and they saw in the WPA Africans and Indians who were prepared to fight it. And Indians felt that Jagan and the PPP were wimps and that the WPA were fighters, and they came over. So you had Africans and Indians together fighting, but not electorally. It wasn't electorally, because when free elections came back in 1992, in those same Indians who thought Jagan was a wimp, they went back to Jagan. And then some Africans who thought that the PNC was overreaching went back to the PNC. So people are talking about the AFC. In 2006, Africans moved to the AFC and give them 5 seats, 25,000 votes. reduced the PNC to 34%. In 2011, the PNC rose from 34 up to 43%. Which means the Africans went back to the PNC, now part of APNU. And Indians moved in to fill that void, because when Nagamootoo came, he brought Indians from Bath Settlement and other parts of the Sugar Belt with him. And they gave the AFC 7 seats. There was a sprinkling of Africans and Amerindians, but the majority of the AFC vote in 2011 came from the Indian community. And predictably, the PPP lost its majority. So the Indians and Africans didn't come to the AFC together. The Indians came in 2011, the Africans came in 2006. When the Africans left, the Indians came in. And when the AFC joined with the PNC and APNU, the Indians said, Tata, we don't vote for you for that. We gone back. They voted for the AFC. They didn't vote for a coalition with the APNU. They didn't. And they say that all the time. The AFC betrayed the people. No, the AFC didn't betray anybody. The Indians who came, the Africans who came first, they left. And then the Indians came afterwards. And once the AFC moved to the APNU, the Indians said, we didn't come to you for that. We gone back. The only instance in our modern history, well, we can say 2 instances. In 1953, the early PPP, we had Indians and Africans coming together and voting for the original PPP of Burnham and Jagan. That was the only time that Indians and Africans voted together. 1953. They voted together. Mr. Bowman fight a PPP seat in a predominantly Indian area on the West Bank, canal pulled around the area, and he won. That has never been replicated. An African running in an Indian district and winning. Sidney King ran in Kitty to Buxton. That constituency was mixed. Indian villages, African villages, and he won. So it is only in the 53 elections that the 2 races voted together. And it is only in the WPA of the 70s and the 80s that Indians and Africans joined a resistance movement together. Those are facts. Tell them David I say so. There was no other instance where the races acted together in modern Guyanese history. I repeat, in 1953, Africans and Indians voted together. And in the WPA movement of the late 70s and early 80s, the Africans and Indians joined a resistance movement together. So all this thing about ethnic voting, if you live in an ethnic society, in a plural society, history has shown that the voting is going to be plural. We are fighting and swimming against the tide. To what? To sound good? Multiracial. There are other forms of multiracialism. When an Indian party and an African party can come together and hold their supporters together in one movement. That's multiracialism. Where Africans and Indians, when we in the WPA in the 1970s, when we inspired a strike in the bauxite industry, and then organized Indians in the sugar industry, mainly on the West Coast, to form a solidarity movement and went on strike too. That's multiracialism. We have to study our history, study our people. Guyana tells me one thing over and over again. He's been telling me it from the time he was 50 to now he's 100. He said, David, most of our political people don't understand politics. And that's what we have. Our elites don't understand the politics. They're some, Dr. Hines, now that you're going into parliament, you have to balance your parliamentary role with your advocacy role. That makes sense. Don't tell me because I'm going into parliament, I must no longer be an advocate. And that is the lack of understanding of politics. You hear the media, you hear the analysts. If Amanza and Nigel and others had stayed in a coalition, the APNU would have done better. Nobody, very few of them, mentions that the only small party that read the situation right and stayed with the coalition with the PNC is the WPA. You don't hear that in their analysis. You don't hear it. They give half the analysis and left out the other half. Because if you create in your head a scenario in which a particular party doesn't fit in, then when the party fits in, you don't know where to fit it in. So now that the WPA is in parliament, they want us to stop being WPA and be the creature of what they want us to be. Bob Marley says, I want to disturb my neighbor. And those on this side of the political architecture, the WPA represents something unique in our politics. It's what you call the independent pole in Guyanese politics. In modern Guyanese politics, you had the first split between between Burnham and Jagan. That created the PNC and the PPP, the new PPP. The Jaganite PPP and the Burnhamite PPP became PNC. And then there was a second split in 1956 when the radical wing of the Jaganite PPP, led by Martin Carter and Sidney King and Rory Westmus, etc., they split from the PPP. And Martin and Rory and so on got out of politics. Guyana stayed in politics. And he became the symbol of that independent pole in Guyanese politics. Yes, he went into the PNC, but he was always an independent in the PNC. That is why the PNC expelled him in 1961, because he took a strong position. And so we have these tendencies, the independent tendency, which tend to be radical, always wanting to move beyond cosmetic changes into fundamental change. and not just going with what is popular, but what is in the interest of people. What is popular is not what is always in the interest of people. We in the WPA feel very strongly that despite all the money and the wealth that we are getting from oil, if we are not part of CARICOM, we remain still a dot on the world map. And therefore, our trajectory, our developmental trajectory, has to be partly a Caribbean CARICOM trajectory. Now, some of our supporters have mixed feelings about CARICOM, and so they may not like a CARICOM thrust because they feel that CARICOM did us in 2020. But despite that, we in the WPA still believe that our destiny lies in the Caribbean family, because as a family, we have a stronger voice than as a dot. We have a lot of oil, but we can't stop America from bombing Venezuela. And Venezuela then said they're going to bomb us and bomb Trinidad. Despite our oil, we cannot stop that. We are wealthy, fastest growing economy in the world, but we can't stop the bombs. We will have a stronger voice if we are part of the Caribbean family. And please remember that Guyana, along with Barbados and Trinidad and Jamaica, were the architects of CARICOM, the Chaguaramas Agreement Treaty of 1973. And we cannot give up our place in the Caribbean family. That's a WPA's position. And we are going to fight for that. We are going to fight for that. And so I make that point to say that you may not always, what is popular may not always be what is correct. And what is correct is not always what is popular. But our brand of politics says that we have to strike that balance between what is popular and what is correct. And if we are going to err, let us err on the side of what is correct, guided by history. And so that independent pole in Guyanese politics, pioneered by UC Guyana, is where we stand. We are the party of this confounded nonsense must stop. If that comes from the PPP, don't sound right. If it comes from the PNC, it don't sound right. Because they are different parties. If it comes from us, this confounded nonsense must stop. It sounds almost right. And that is what I mean by different parties having different outlook. And that is why we have to come together. People are saying Norton at 12. No, Norton had 11 choices. One was given to the WPA. And WPA chose its own representative. Not 11 to play with, not 12. But it's the disrespect for somebody like myself coming from the WPA. Disrespect for us. They just lump in one pot. Because it's easy. They don't have to think anymore. They don't have to think. A set of Buxtonians, I was reliably informed, they looked at Dr. Campbell's interview on sources, and they concluded that there might be some problems between the WPA and the APNU and between Dr. Hines and Dr. Campbell, because Dr. Campbell's adumbration about what the APNU would look like going forward in Parliament. They said that there are some things that they don't think Dr. Hines will agree with. I am not saying they're telling the truth. I'm not saying they're right. What I'm saying is that they recognize that we are in a partnership, but we are diverse. And the WPA wants to make it very clear that we are not the party of Charandas. We are not. We accept the APNU's parliamentary agenda. We accept Dr. Campbell's leadership. But we also reserve the right to our independence. And that independence doesn't include Charandasism. We want to make that clear. We are not the party of Charandas. We are not the party of resigners. And I don't mean to be unkind to people. I don't want to get into PNC politics and so on. I stay clear of that. But I want to say we are not the party of Charandas. We are not the party of resigners. We are an independent party with an independent view of the world that will fight and struggle with our partners to balance our diverse worldviews into one. We are confident that we don't have to have 10 seats to carry out our agenda. With 1 seat, we can carry out our agenda. Because our objective is not seats. Our objective is a place at the table. And so different parties have different philosophies. All I'm doing here is I'm not critiquing other philosophy, other parties and their philosophies, because they are our partners. What I'm laying out is where the WPA stand. And most of the analysts and others, they can't deal with that. Rutherford called it chaos in order and order in chaos. Diversity. We don't have to become somebody else. Brother David rather say, you can be you. And me can be me. And that is the damn thing self that make us such a wonderful civilization. I don't have to go and eat with my finger and eat with my hand to prove my solidarity with my Indian brothers and sisters. I don't have to do that. I don't have to wear a dhoti to show solidarity with Indians. I can wear my dashiki. And my brother wear his dhoti. And together, that diversity becomes the bulwark against external domination. We have to begin to deconstruct our country differently. The elites have failed us in terms of being honest in their articulation. Bharat Jagdeo scares the opposition every day, and he controls the narrative because he scares them. He calls all of us racist. And most of us try to prove we are not racist. Proving to Jagdeo called me racist. I have nothing to prove to him. Because if the standards by which he's called racist, he's more racist than me. Jagdeo has more charges. If you are given charges for racism or what appears to be racism, Jagdeo would be spending 100 years in jail. I wouldn't get a charge. All they're calling me racist, the ERC, which is partisan, never charge me, never call me before them for something that I say. Put that in the pipe and smoke it. The ERC called plenty people. It never called David Hinds for uttering anything that was racist. And DRC don't necessarily like people like me. But that's what the PPP does. It uses the media, uses that 92, 93, 94% covering the media, and it drums me, the racist, Rickford Buck racist, David Hines racist, Aubrey Norton racist. Yeah. And they call David Hines racist, and everybody run from David Hines. And then tomorrow, the same people running from me, they call them racist, and they're going to come back to David Hines' side of the fence. That the people are manipulating us as African leaders, and we taking manipulating. And they vex with me because I ain't taking manipulation. No surrender, no surrender. No surrender, no surrender. I am not taking manipulation. But they have manipulated our leaders. And one of the reasons I am postulating, I'm posing it as an hypothesis. One of the reasons that we have lost, I think temporarily, some of our electoral support. Our electoral support, that's what we have lost. I am posing this hypothesis. I'm hypothesizing that one of the factors that led to the electoral migration is the way in which we allowed Jagdio and the PPP to manipulate us. Jagdio was telling us, reach out. The Indian supremacist Ravidev telling we, crossover, look for crossover. And while we're looking for crossover, mommy thieving. While we're looking for Ravidev crossover from the Indian community, Ravidev thieving with chicken, and the PPP shutting their chicken pen for we. Are you hearing me again? Ravidev, the Indian supremacists, give Jagdio on them the narrative that we are racist, we must cross over, we must look for crossover. Don't worry, David Hines saying, secure your base. And we start looking for the crossover. And the PPP put a horse and staple on their votes. And we left we full pen open. And as it in thief 80,000 of each chicken. I'm telling it black. We leaders on our side are too easily manipulated. We have to stop it. And Indian supremacists, Ravidev, sell we the snake I'll call crossover. And we looking for crossover. PPP slammed the door in we face. Big ass and staple padlock. And we left we folk open. By the time we turn around, Mohammed gone with 80,000. And another 60,000 fly out a folk coop and they gone at the bush. I'm only posing it as an hypothesis. The scholars and the researchers will have to test it. But I think it's a very reasonable hypothesis. Sorry. May I repeat them? The Indian supremacist, Ravidev, who's the architect of the Indian domination policy, sell PPP. I don't know how much they pay him. But he sell them the ideology. Tell them they must behave themselves and reach out to Indians to cross over vote. And some of we buy it. Push we head for going the PPP foul pen. And the PPP put on a big ass and staple, but 3 of them on the full pen. All of it don't knock away head. Knock away head. And with this pen left open. Mohammed come thief. 80,000. 60,000 flying, they gone away a bush. They gone in the bush and hide. When we look back, all we have left is 80,000 faithful, 77, 80,000 faithful. Quite a lot. But look how we allow the other side to manipulate me. And then Jack Dio laugh. Aubrey Norton. And he may well put in David Hines there, but he couldn't because I saw the stupidness. Aubrey Norton is a political scientist, and doesn't he know that the first thing is to secure your base? Of course Aubrey Norton knows that. Aubrey Norton knows it. I know it, that the first thing you do is secure your base. And I know when they're telling me that we must look for other people's base, they were securing their base. So he's trying to belittle Norton, but he's making a larger point. And the larger point is that you must secure your base in an ethnically divided society. In America, they came up with what is called the Southern Strategy, the Republicans. They were losing presidential elections. And this guy, he dead now, I forget his name. Are you going to remember his name? He came up with the Southern Strategy. He says to the Republicans, run up your score in the South. 90% in Alabama, 95% in Mississippi, 80-something% in Louisiana. Run up your score there. And then all you need among the northern whites is 40% of them, and you win election after election. And the PPP has worked out that strategy. Secure your base. Secure your base. And then spend $30 billion to get a couple extra Africans and Amerindians. Just in case. Just in case. Just in case. Just in case. The PPP's Southern Strategy. Secure your base. And buy, take state media money and buy a handful of Amerindians and Africans just in case. Secure your base, rig. Secure your base and then rig the rest. And spend government money to get a handful of Africans and Amerindians to mask the rigging. That's the PPP strategy. Simple. What is our strategy? We can't rig. We can't rig. We ain't got the money. Then what is our strategy? That's my homework for you all tonight. Right? We can't rig. We ain't got the money to mask and to buy vote. Then what is our electoral strategy going forward? That's the homework for tomorrow. I love you all, always. And I hope you have been able to shed some light. Thanks to everybody. Oh my God. I can't remember the names. I can't remember the names of so many people who have reached out to me. So many people have stopped their cars here in Buxton just to say a word, just to take a little selfie. I just can't remember everybody. But I want to thank you all for the faith that you all have shown with us. It may not be captured in polls, but it's captured by the encouragement that you give us. Sister Natalie from Brooklyn, love you, sister. I love Sister Gail, I think, who called me yesterday. She said she's 80 years old and that I'm still teaching her. I'm so flattered if that word is still there in the dictionary, but I'm humbled. Sister Gail, Brother Fraser called me today. Remind me that I wrote a column in 1994 in the Caribbean Daylight, why young people must stay in school. I can't remember, but he said he has it. He has framed it. And when he's giving Christmas present and birthday present to young people, he gives them that. He framed it and gives them. I'm so honored. You know, you do this work and you don't know. You don't know who you're touching. You know, I was interviewed by some young people over the weekend, and they were telling me something about following, implying that my message did not penetrate to African people, and because young people this and young people that. And I invited them, I said, come and follow me wherever I go in this country. Come and follow me. Come and follow me in the villages, and you will know who I'm impacting or who I'm not impacting. And I challenge any media to do that. In America, they do that. They follow political people around. That's why they get it right, the media, most of the time. I invite them and say, come and follow me. I'm not going to compete with the PNC for electoral support. It's counterproductive. All it going to mean is that we're splitting up the vote. So you don't measure politics only by the number of votes you get. That's why they're crying that the PNC is dead. What stupidness. Stupidness, that's what it is. The PNC suffer a big setback. But that don't mean the PNC is dead. The problem is not with the party. That's my humble view. Though the party must take responsibility, the problem lies in the party base. It is the base that we have to try to understand, not the party. The party is part of the problem. But the issue at hand is the base. Those 140,000 and more voters who either stayed home or voted win. What going on there? That's what we have to explore. But instead, we're exploring the party. The party got regroup. The party got rebuild. The party got this. I am telling you, you can rebuild a party. You can form 250 party groups in Guyana. I am positive that that will only take care of 10% of the problem. I'm not saying that the party or the parties don't need to rejuvenate themselves. They have to do that. But that's not the issue. To get back the votes, you have to figure out why you lose the votes. And you can only figure that out when you go to the voters and ask them why you all do what you all do. But people are not saying that. They're saying, oh, the party must rebuild and Norton must go and Norton can go. You know, Norton can go. I don't see that as solving the problem of the loss of electoral support. That's my humble opinion. I'm not putting my mouth in PNC story. Burnham used to say, you know, Burnham used to say, if you kill me, another Rasta gonna take my place. You know, we are looking for quick answers, and we are coming up with these simplistic answers. In 2019, they said Armand must go. Well, Armand left and he gone. Norton come. And now we say Norton must go. It's a simplistic nonsense. It's my humble opinion. I'm not putting my mouth in PNC story. If PNC people figure Norton must go, they got walked out in their party. But I'm speaking here as someone who's observing Guyanese politics, as a political commentator. I'm saying that will solve only a small part of the problem, if at all. The larger part of the problem is to figure out why those 140,000 plus voters did not vote for us. That is the question. Good night. I love you all so much. And I can only express that love in the best way, fraternally. I'm going to see you all tomorrow night. Until then, keep the faith. Keep the faith. Faith will see us through. Faith will see us through. It's going to be a long, hot summer, but we're going to make it through to the end.